This is a display board, another display board. It's not the same one. And it shows various hands. Now, remember, you could, with a photocopy machine, you could duplicate hands pretty good. I don't know if they're as good as the ink copy that Cairo used. He used to take a ink roller and roll people's hands with actually putting ink on it, and it was very effective. But these were made with photocopies, and they're pretty darn good. They come out okay. Now, just as an interesting point, I want to show you what we can find with the hand with a little bit of knowledge. You see how big this palm is, and see how small these hands are? The fingers are, pardon me, and the palm is big. That's a fire hand. Now, let me show you another thing. See how long these fingers are here, and how the palm is square, but the fingers are very long, like long fingers are sitting on a palm. That's an ear hand. And that's a person that likes to read and study. And they're usually pretty practical because they have the square palm with the long fingers. Where if you look over here, it looks like the fingers are sitting on a very long palm, but they're short fingers. Over here you have long fingers. You notice the difference? And here again is an air hand. Okay, the fingers are pretty big, and the palm. Now it tends to be a little bit fire, but it is an air hand because of the proportions. You always have to look at proportions. That's why 7 different type of hands are really rough. This is a fire hand, so you have the palm looks much bigger than the fingers. Where this would be an earth hand. See how square the palm is, and the fingers are relatively short? That would be kind of an earth hand, which is the practical hand. There's nothing wrong with it. We're just talking about the types that they are. Now, this over here, again, is an ear hand. Pretty square palm, long fingers. You could sing. It's all proportions. You have to get used to looking at it. And when you look at the various hands, like some of these come from Cairo's books. He has the palm prints of murderers, and he in his original book, Language of the Hand, he had Walt Disney's hand, Sarah Bernhardt, and he used to take actual palm prints with ink and a roller, which kind of like is a little bit on the dirty side. Now, if we look over here. And this is this is an actual hand. This is a Saturn heart line. You can see the headline is curved. It's curving down. That's a very sensitive person. He has what they call the lucky M, or she has the lucky M. It's an M that's formed by the heart line and the headline and the fate line. And you see that little M in there? It's a lucky M, they call it. This is called the Mercury line. It's a they also call it the Hepatica, which is the health line, and it goes towards Mercury one way or the other. This is the Sun line, which comes over here. That means the person gets some acknowledgement for things that they do. If you look at this hand here, the Apollo finger, the sun finger, is very large. That means that they would have an August or a Leo person in their life, and perhaps a February Aquarius, and somebody born on the 1st, 10th, 19th, or 28th. Now, if you look at fingers, this is a spatulate finger. Spatulate is inventive and intuitive. It looks like a pharmacist's spatula, which is it's square on both. It's square on top, and it's almost like pointed going up, but with a square top. This over here, this finger is Apollo. It's conical, and this pinky is very narrow. It's a very psychic type of pinky. So they have this is an intuitive talker, and conical is between pointed and square. It means it's a very practical form of art, but very intuitive as far as the way they deal with people in leadership. So this is the way we look at a palm. You start looking at it. Here's a headline that's attached, a big Venus mount because it goes way into the back middle of the hand. The Venus mount. The fate line's going straight up towards Saturn, and it comes from the middle, which means the plane of Mars, and that means the person has a little bit of difficulty in their life and they made their own way. Now, here's a fate line that comes right off the lifeline. See, it comes right here and it goes up, but it starts at the lifeline where this one starts in the middle of the lower palm. This is somebody that makes their own way, and this is a person that also makes their own way, but later in life. See, when you start here and you go there, and all of a sudden their fate starts later in life, because when you go around the thumb, this is pretty well on for a distance, and then they made their fate. Where this person, it started right from the beginning and right lower, they worked their way up. Because age is on the fate line, starts here and goes up. On the age on the lifeline starts around the thumb and goes towards the middle of the hand. So the thumb is actually the beginning. Now, like I said, this hand here is what we call a fire hand, and you can see that the person's careful. The headline is hooked up right to that. Now, this over here, okay, shows a Jupiterian heart line. It starts right under the mount of Jupiter. Over here, it's the same thing, a Jupiterian heart line, and the headline is very straight. It doesn't curve, but it goes towards the mount of the moon, but it is absolutely straight. So I just do this so that people can become familiar with the hand. And that's what this is all about. And like I said, this shows various kinds of fingers. This is one of my charts. I was saying before in the other tape that when you have bumpy, knot-like fingers, that's called the philosopher. And it's somebody that really, really thinks about things. The smooth fingers are just instantaneous. So when you look at hands, they're not all the same. See, on this hand, the pinky is very large. That's Mercury. Very good communication. The Apollo, the sun fingers, very long. That's a very creative person. And if you looked at the way the line went, the heart line is right under Jupiter, which is good. And they have a detached headline. It's very close to the lifeline, but it is detached. See, after a while, you're going to look at it, a hand, and just from learning the segments and everything, you're going to come up with some pretty quick conclusions, like is it an attached headline or detached? Is it straight or is it arced? Is this finger big or is it short? If you notice another thing I want to show you, that this pinky right here is below the other fingers, that makes the person very critical. And this again is the same thing, the pinky's below. If you look at this hand here, the pinky starts down here, and it makes the person very critical. Okay? So they're very good communicator because it's still relatively large, but they're very critical in their thinking and outlook. So you're going to learn the proportions of hands as you take a lot of hands and you get photocopies and you examine hands. You get feelings about them. And let me say another thing. I knew a guy years ago. His name was Don Batty, and he would ask people for a piece of jewelry, a ring, whatever, some item that they had on them a lot, and he would close his eyes and get impressions from it. And that's called psychometry. Well, when you touch somebody's hand, it has a psychotromic effect. In other words, you're holding their hand, you're also getting vibes from them. So besides the lines and the fingers and the joints and the mounts, you're also getting vibes. And this is a science or a learning where everything counts.